Are you ever influenced by the company in terms of the way that you write your reports? Is there any reason to doubt the veracity of what you're saying?
You can get into a situation where, as an example, a company says, "Oh, we've got this one test that shows 80% recovery, but the overall test might show 65%." So you can disclose both those figures, but clearly you have to, as a consultant and somebody who, remember, we have to take professional indemnity insurance as well as our brand or our name risk as well. So we as a company, again, always have to err on the side of caution. Now, there are ways and means you can skin a cat. There are ways and means you can write something perhaps more positive or less positive, but we have to disclose the issues at
Right.
hand. With the JORC Code 2012, the most recent version of that came out. There's the table 1 at the very end that very few people look at, but within that there's a principle of if not, why not. If you're not talking about something, or if you didn't do something, you have to disclose why. So that's actually a very useful table for investors to look at,
Okay.
because
Okay.
that granularity basically.
Okay. So without wanting to get into the depths of the competent person's report, you would say if, and sorry, let me ask, do companies have to disclose the competent person report details as part of their as part of the
Whenever they
exchange
list
regulations?
whenever you list on the stock exchange, the CPR, the competent person report, is within those listing listing
In
documents.
full
So
detail.
in full detail, typically with appendices, etc. Now, just one other point, and it's a very valid point, and I'd like to make a couple of points about the competent person's report, or even a feasibility study. There's always a competent person in their field. I'm a competent person as a geologist. I'm not as a metallurgist or mining engineer. So you will typically have 6 or 7 or 10 competent persons having compiled a competent person or a feasibility study. But you will typically have, and in our case it's Dr. Phil Newell, who's the MD of Wardell. He would typically review all of those reports and be the overall lead person. But we personally have to take that responsibility. I am a fellow of the FAusIMM. I'm also a chartered professional geologist, and I'm also on their list of the register of consultants. You will obviously get some requests for, oh, don't put this in or do put that in or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's taken me 24 years to get to the position I'm at. I'm not going to lose my reputation or be disciplined by FAusIMM or any other body to then lose that accreditation, because it's quite difficult to get, So you have your own internal professionalism as well as the company. Now, having said all that, people can make mistakes. There was a very interesting report done by the Ontario Stock Exchange or Securities Commission, I think it was, in 2013, where they examined 50 feasibility studies or reports, and I think 40% of them had fatal flaws, or
Fatal.
what they would consider fatal flaws,
What's a
or
fatal flaw?
serious issues. So things that hadn't been done. Now, they didn't disclose who they were or what they were, but the point is that even if it's got the words NI 43101 report written on it, or feasibility study, you still have to read it yourself and take a judgment, number one. And the other point is about feasibility studies. You can get a negative result with the feasibility study. People think, oh, it's got a feasibility study, it's a great project. It's not always the case. So you do have to take the time to read those. At the very least, if I could say, if you got limited time and you got 15 reports to read the executive summary, read the conclusions and recommendations, and skim through the JORC Table 1. And obviously, you should read all
Great.
of it,
Okay, great recommendation. Look, and today's session is about just touching upon a few topics, and you've kindly agreed to be, part of a series where we can deep dive into some of these topics moving forward. And of course, people will send in their ideas, suggestions, thoughts, questions as well. So, I do appreciate that. So, that says to me, people, the information is there. Do your homework. People like you have spent a lot of time, effort, and experience in putting these reports together, and the conclusions are quite easy to find if you want to find them. Okay, so let's not. Actually, just finish with one question. How much money do companies pay typically for one of a competent person's report, and how long do they take to put together?
A competent person's report, if it's a single asset, like a single gold mine or project could cost anywhere from £50,000 to £150,000. It really depends on how much information there is, how much information you have to do. If somebody says, here's a database and here's some reports, they've bought it off a project, we have to do everything, then it's going to cost a fair amount of time, and it could take 4, 6 months, maybe even 8 months. If a company says, we've got all this information, we've built up ourselves, we just need you to review it, sign off on the mineral resource estimate, the ore reserves, and make sure you're happy and come to some conclusions, recommendations with metallurgy, as well as obviously the very important environmental, social, and all the rest of it. That can be a lot shorter. But
Right.
To do a competent person's report, especially if it's listing on the stock exchange where it could go back and forwards with the authorities, it's a good 2, 3, 4, 5 months.
It's an interesting point, actually, because when we paid for them in the past, we've had all sorts of quotes thrown at us, and I kind of like the reassuringly expensive ones, because it suggests that more work has gone into it. We've been offered reports as low as $25,000, which makes me nervous, because that literally seems like a tick box exercise and a signature. But look, let's do more of that another day. Some of the other topics that we are going to discuss going forward will be, the lithium market. I think you mentioned earlier, perhaps some of the things which are going on in the DRC. You've obviously got the IOM3 conference coming up next week, which you guys are at.
Yes.
Just give us a quick overview of that, because people might find that interesting. Certainly some of the content on the website is. So,
sure. It's a 2-day conference hosted in London by IMO3. The title is Mining in the Electric Vehicle. There's a whole host of presenters. I'm one of them. I'll be talking on basically the cobalt and the electric vehicle supply, demand, some of those aspects, which are very interesting. And then we have a gentleman, Dr. Chris Broadbent, who's also with Wardell, and Christine Blackmore, who's the chair of one of the committees. To your listeners, there is a 10% discount if they go onto the register and use the code POD10. So there are still some spaces available. I highly encourage people to go along. It's not expensive for 2 days, and there's even I think a Thames riverboat trip for a bit of socializing on the Wednesday evening.